Hi, this is Kogito, and I'm back with another Through the Ages video. So in the last video, we saw that with my win in my first 3-player game in the third round of the World Championship, I have put myself in a position to potentially come back in this group after doing not so well in the 2 4-player games. I am 1.5 points behind DB Starman with 1 less game played, and I'm 7.5 points behind El Chupacabra with 2 less games played. So it is certainly possible for me to win this group if I do well in my remaining 5 games, but of course that's a big if. So the first step in that project is my second 3-player game that I played against El Chupacabra and DB Starman, and since that's against the 2 players ahead of me, this 3-player game could be particularly important to deciding who wins this group. So without further ado, let's take a look. In this game, I'm playing third, and we can take a quick look at the leaders and wonders. So in Age 3, we have all 3 theater leaders in Chaplin, Malena, and Fleming. No Hollywood, though. There's an internet, as well as Sid Meier and Albert Einstein for the internet, so definitely a wonder to keep our eye on. There's also a Manhattan Project, but Gandhi to oppose that. Mandela and other wonders are more neutral. In Age 3, there is Bach to potentially go with that theater plan, as well as James Watt for coal, Isaac Newton for scientific method, Nobel also for science, so there's no real science payoff in Age 3, except perhaps Einstein. There's also Gotti to help with theaters, James Cook, but no Suez Canal, Catherine the Great for military actions. There are a bunch of powerful wonders in Age 2, not as many powerful wonders as Age 1. In Age 1, it looks like there are more leaders that like being transition leaders, such as Barbarossa, Eleanor, Columbus, and Gutenberg, Jan Žižka, kind of, rather than leaders like Saladin that enjoy being played early. There is also Michelangelo to pair with St. Peter's, notably. Anyway, to get to the game, El Chupacabra takes the pyramids. That seems good to me. DB Starman notably takes Alexander and Richland instead of any of these cards for 2 civil actions. Can understand that though. Colossus, there's no Suez with it. Military looks possible, especially in Age 1 and maybe mid-Age 2, but there aren't a lot of military payoffs in the game. Also Gandhi, as mentioned previously. Acropolis potentially could be used with a theater synergy in Age 2 and Age 3, but there's not a ton of theater synergy, especially with no Hollywood, so I've also found Acropolis to be a bit of an inconsistent card myself. As for Boudica, she is normally a very strong leader, not so much in 3-player games though, because in order to get her regular bonus, you need to be as strong or stronger than both of your opponents. And in this game, there's Alexander the Great, which makes it a lot harder for Boudica to get a regular bonus. So with that in mind, I can definitely understand taking Alexander, especially since you get a rich land with him. As for me, though, for reasons stated previously, I wasn't a huge fan of any of these cards for 2 civil actions. Now, I think taking one of them with the rich land would be entirely defensible. I'm not entirely sure which one of them might be best, as stated, they all kind of have their issues. Maybe Boudica, just because she's the only leader in the row, but it would be pretty awkward to take her when DB Starman already had Alexander. For all those reasons, I decided to take this Engineering Genius instead, just as a generically powerful card that kind of works well no matter what leader and wonder from Age A I might get. Now, it is a little bit risky, especially since I won't be getting a leader from the row. I'll need to depend on one coming out of the deck. There are a ton coming out of the deck, maybe none that are super exciting, but there are some that might be reasonable. So I think it's not too risky. It's more, I thought that I valued it over getting one of these plus the 1 resource. In retrospect, maybe the 2 rocks here aren't so much better. I mean, they're definitely a lot better, but maybe taking this 1 rock plus a guaranteed leader of wonder. But again, you know, none of these, this leader and these wonders weren't too exciting for me. And taking the higher value yellow card with a leader who was perhaps just as good or better than Boudica in my next turn might be better after all. I think it's maybe, as often the case in the first turn, it's kind of a preference thing. Age 1 begins. El Chupacabra takes Boudica, even though again she's not so good with Alexander in the game. She's the only leader available for 1 civil action, so that does make sense, and does other typical things. DB Starman elects Alexander, increases their population, takes the Colossus. The Colossus at least kinda goes along with Alexander, although oftentimes you get rid of Alexander early, so maybe not so much. But if DB Starman chooses to keep Alexander around, especially in this game, because El Chupacabra has Boudica, it might be valuable to keep Alexander around for a few extra turns. Colossus also helps against Boudica, so that kind of makes sense. I think it's a pretty good wonder even when there's no Suez in the game. Notably, though, they take the frugality here instead of building the mine. This is pretty surprising to me. I'm not... Maybe DB Starman is looking to finish the Colossus quickly, although I think building this mine wouldn't make a difference as to how fast the Colossus gets completed, especially with the Richland making it cheaper. Maybe DB Starman just values the frugality really highly, but it's still kind of a interesting decision to me, surprising perhaps. As for me, I do end up taking the Acropolis. It's not, as I said, it's a little bit of an inconsistent wonder when you're in a 3 or 4 player game. I do think it's better in a 3 player game though, and there's a decent amount of theater synergy here. And obviously the science discount for the government can also be good. So it's the only wonder available to me here. And as said previously, the Age 1 wonders aren't super exciting. There are a few that are good, but waiting for an Age 1 wonder as your first one may be less good than it can sometimes be. So I just went with the Acropolis because it's available for me right now. I also built a mine, increased my population. That leaves me with one less civil action to do. I could have, instead of doing this, taken one of these leaders for 2 civil actions, but I didn't see the need to. My opponents both have taken a leader already. I figured that probably, so Cleopatra is going to be discarded before my next turn, but probably neither of my other leaders are. I didn't expect my opponents to take any of these yellow cards. And even if they did, I should at least be able to get Sun Tzu, who would also be a pretty good leader, especially against Boudica. So I was comfortable waiting for one of these to drop down to 1 civil action instead of taking them for 2. It definitely would have been defensible to take one of these for 2 civil actions instead of the wonder, though. Now, taking Cleopatra without an AJ wonder is pretty questionable. Sun Tzu or Hippocrates, especially perhaps Sun Tzu because of Boudica, could have also been defended. But in this case, I think I was comfortable taking the wonder instead of leaving the leader for next turn for 2 reasons. First of all, it gets me this Urban Growth. Urban Growth A, not the most exciting card, but as yellow cards go, especially since I already built my mine, it is the best one. If this Urban Growth wasn't available for me and I would have been forced to take a less value AJ yellow card, then I might have gone with the leader instead. But because I had this Urban Growth, and in addition, because I expected to get Hippocrates on my next turn, as of all the AJ leaders, Hippocrates is the one, I mentioned this in the last video, he's the one that's most forgiving of you playing him on your 3rd turn instead of your 2nd, because he gives you your value later in the game anyway. All the other AJ leaders give you their value immediately, so you really want them on turn 2. But Hippocrates gives you delayed value, so it doesn't matter nearly as much, especially in this game as mentioned previously, because you kind of want to wait to get an Age 1 leader anyway. I was kind of figuring that I would probably take Hippocrates here, and so I figured it would be fine to wait till turn 3 to play my leader. So for those 2 reasons, I was comfortable doing it this way. I drew a Pestilence in the bonus card. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the development of warfare. Kind of unfortunate for El Chupacabra because, oh wait, is it or is it lucky? No. So actually, never mind. The opposite of unfortunate. This is, that's how Boudica works with the development of warfare. Very fortunate, probably the most fortunate event draw for El Chupacabra, because if this card hadn't been revealed, they would have had to build the warrior anyway in order to use Boudica's bonus. But now instead, the warrior gets built before Boudica's ability activates, which means because they're tied in strength with DB Starman now, they get to use Boudica's regular resource, in this case taking a science with her. So definitely a good ton of events for El Chupacabra. Of course, the downside is they can't build their 2nd mine this turn because their population is in warriors, but instead they have a powerful wonder they can work on instead of their labs. So these early turns going well for El Chupacabra. Takes the knights and increases the population. Chooses to increase the population instead of in order to go into consumption, but the alternative would have been to take one of these AJ yellow cards that aren't too exciting, so that decision does make sense to me. And also with Boudica, El Chupacabra can potentially take some food to make up for going into early consumption. DB Starman chooses to use Alexander's ability immediately instead of keeping him around to potentially deny El Chupacabra the Boudica bonus. But that is because DB Strumman has a powerful Age 1 leader, Yen Ziska, to take immediately, so I think that's definitely a defensible decision. DB Strumman, in addition, increases the population and builds their mine this turn. Because of Alexander, DB Strumman is still not in consumption. So I think that's a reasonable turn. And plays the Fighting Band tactic, actually. So even with that Alexander, they're still forcing El Chupacabra to not letting El Chupacabra get the normal Boudica bonus. So definitely a good turn for DB Strumman. As for me, I had a little bit of a difficult decision to make. I think one thing that I could definitely do this turn is to just ditch the AJ leader entirely and take Saladin. Saladin, I think, is probably the most powerful Age 1 leader if you get him early like this. So that definitely could have been strongly considered. However, I decided that instead it would have been better to just take Hippocrates and Saladin both. Now, the reason that I decided to do this is because, like with my opponents, I took the development of warfare, meaning I wouldn't be able to build my second lab this turn anyway. So spending all 4 of my civil actions just taking cards like this, I thought was reasonable for that reason. Used reason twice. An alternative play, like I said, might have been to just take Saladin and play him immediately, and then with my last civil action, perhaps started to build my Acropolis, or maybe increase my population or something. Although increasing my population and going into consumption unnecessarily I wasn't a fan of. But I think that Hippocrates can definitely be a powerful leader, especially when I have this replacement leader in hand for him already. This is a powerful replacement leader. So I thought that spending 1 civil action... So I'm basically spending the 1 civil action to take Hippocrates, and I'm losing 2 extra potential bonus civil actions from waiting to play Saladin, because I'm only going to take 2 Hippocrates tokens. So I'm kind of exchanging 3 civil actions for 2 Hippocrates tokens, which is maybe a closer trade than it might seem, because the civil actions I would get immediately, whereas the Hippocrates tokens would take a while. Now, on the other hand, the 1 civil action I would get this turn from not taking Hippocrates, because I think it's good to take the free warrior. It's hard to see what I would have spent that extra civil action on. Could have increased my population, but that would put me into consumption. I mean, I guess I would have built 1 stage of the Acropolis, which would have been a fine thing to do. So, yeah, I think that getting those extra 3 civil actions immediately versus the delayed Hippocrates tokens is pretty close. And definitely just taking Saladin and playing him immediately would have been very defensible, maybe better than Hippocrates. I'll confess that I'm still not entirely sure how high to value Hippocrates, because he's the 1 leader in the game that gives you delayed value. It makes it, I think, really hard to evaluate him. We can see in this game how useful those Hippocrates tokens end up being, and maybe what the extra civil actions could have gotten me. I mean, I don't see it because I didn't want to risk being in corruption. If I reveal a resource event, I would have had no way to avoid corruption. I draw raiders in an immigration. Chupacabra seeds. Reveals development of trade routes, so it would have been bad for me to seed after all. Finishes pyramids, takes Code of Laws, and urban growth. Unfortunately, El Chupacabra has no good ability to use Boudica's military bonus because they would be in rebellion. So, good play from DB Strumman. These are a reasonable consolation prize, though, I think. DB Strumman finishes Colossus to get even stronger, takes the second copy of Knights, so I will be able to play without Knights. That is, however, all that they can do, so they pass up building the second lab to do this. I maybe would have built the second lab instead of... I'm not sure how much Colossus is doing right now, when it's still a while before the event deck flips, but it does put additional pressure on both me and El Chupacabra, so it's a defensible play. I still don't seed. We'll see for my turn why. I increase my population twice because of the resource events that were seeded, and because of the fact that I didn't spend any of my resources last turn. It'll take a little bit of effort for me to get out of corruption, but not too bad because I can just do this. And we'll see what I think I'll probably build a second lab. I do take this Monarchy, though. I think Monarchy with Acropolis and Saladin should be a very strong card for me, so I think that's a pretty clear take. As for my last civil action, I did build that second lab. This gets me out of corruption. I didn't want to... Even though I am the player without Knight, so I'll probably need to invest more in Warriors at some point, I didn't see a need to do this immediately. I have a defense card in my hand, so I'm not vulnerable to an aggression. So I thought that getting the science going faster especially since I'm planning on playing Monarchy, would be better. I mean, especially since I'll want this anyway to play Monarchy with the Acropolis. Now, we can see that if I had done the Saladin play instead, this turn, in addition, I would have been able to complete the Acropolis, because I would have had one stage built last turn, and I could finish it this turn with the Engineering Genius. That definitely would have been... It would have been pretty good. You know, I would have gotten basically one extra culture. The extra strength wouldn't really make a difference at this point in time. So I think so far, the bonus civil actions wouldn't have done that much for me, but I think next turn is the one when we can start judging. And we can see I didn't see it because I still would have been in corruption with no good way to get out of it if a resource event was revealed. Now I do have to decide which cards to discard, and I think let's see. Yeah, I keep the immigration. That's what I expected. So Pestilence, I felt that I was a little bit scared of military at this point, again, because I'm the player without knights. So I felt that the population was more useful for me than it was for my opponents for that reason. And Raiders, similarly, I was suspecting I was probably going to be weakest, or at least there was a very good chance I would be weakest. So I didn't want to see strength events if I could help it. Immigration, at least I have a chance of winning. Nobody has a happy face wonder, so it's kind of an even playing field when it comes to winning the immigration. I draw an aggression, and unfortunately I draw a nice tactic when I can't play it. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the development of planning. The options are civil life, markets, and settlement. I think unless you have maybe a good science to play with civil life, settlement is definitely the best one here, because like civil life, it saves you a civil action, but it also saves you a resource cost. Settlement is probably, I would say it's probably the best development in the deck. You could argue religion or civil life, but I think settlement is the most consistent. Anyway, so I understand why El Chupacabra took settlement, even though they could have possibly spent it on Code of Laws. But then maybe El Chupacabra wouldn't have been able to play knights next turn. Anyway, settlement is definitely a justifiable card to take. They also increase the population normally to get out of corruption, and they do play the knights after all, so they decided to value the extra pop over the extra science, but especially with Boudica, that makes some sense, although they're still not stronger than DB Starman after building this knight with Boudica's resource. They also are able to build a second lab with the urban growth and take a breakthrough and a rich land. Makes sense to me. Maybe the alchemy could have been considered to be sure of having something to upgrade, but these cards are also quite good yellow cards, so it makes sense. And they do have they have the second medieval army tactic, so El Chupacabra is now the strongest, and definitely made a strength play that I am going to have to respond to, possibly. DB Starman also seeds reveals the development of religion. DB Starman takes an iron for 2 civil actions, increases the population, plays the knights, and builds a knight, so now they are strongest. That turn makes sense to me, and now I am definitely being pressured by my opponents. It is notable that DB Starman was not able to find a way to play Yenziska this turn, though. But now that Hippocrates has given me 2 tokens, I am now in a position where I can easily take Saladin. The third Hippocrates token much less viable than the first 2 because you only get it for 1 or 2 turns. So definitely I value the earlier civil action a lot more than the third Hippocrates token. The question is what else to do with my turn. Like I said, the problem I'm facing is that my tactic is a knight's tactic. Now I could copy the fighting band tactic. There's a swordsman on the road, but available for 3 civil actions, so kind of a tricky turn, a lot of potential options here, but I do have a very natural way to at least not be vulnerable to an aggression, which is to finish the Acropolis and then play the Monarchy. So with this now I'm at 3 strength thanks to the Acropolis, and with the Monarchy with the Monarchy's extra military action, I am now not vulnerable to an aggression from either of my opponents. So I think this is definitely the right thing to do first. Question is what to do with my remaining 2 civil actions. Note again, I would have had 4 if I had not taken Hippocrates. So we'll see what I do with the 2. I think that there are a couple, maybe 2 major options here. Perhaps drama could be considered with Bach. Brennan Circuses, maybe, although I already have the Temple. maybe also, with the immigration in my hand, the happy face buildings are also more attractive. Alchemy can also, but I think probably better, instead of taking one of these urban buildings, is to take alchemy for potential upgrades. Now, I wouldn't be able to play the alchemy next turn, but it would be a use for me for this urban growth that I have. I was not able to use the urban growth previously when I built my second lab last turn because I didn't actually mention that, but I guess I would have been corruption, possibly. Would I have been? I don't remember anymore. Maybe I didn't because I was looking forward to this turn, because we can see that now if I had had an extra rock, I would be in corruption this turn. So maybe the reason why I didn't play the urban growth last turn was I was looking forward to this turn, potentially. In any event, the alchemy would provide me with an opportunity to use this urban growth, or would guarantee me that I could use the urban growth before the end of the age. On the other hand, maybe in the next couple turns, my rocks are going to be put into my military instead, possibly. I think the Silk Road is also a very defensible card to take in this situation, because I have both Saladin and the Monarchy. I have plenty of civil action, so I can definitely afford the civil action cost. So when in that situation, you always need to highly consider Silk Road. I think I do. Well, I adopt the Fighting Man tactic to make me even safer, but instead of Silk Road, I do take the Alchemy and the second Urban Growth. I think the Silk Road definitely would have been a very defensible card to take in this situation. I think the reason I took the Alchemy instead was because, partly to guarantee that I have a building in my hand that I'll be able to upgrade in Age 1, and partly, again, as a way to guarantee that I can use this Age A Urban Growth. And I didn't want to take these Happy Face buildings. I was looking forward to using a Theology, possibly, as my Happy Face solution. Now, we can definitely see in this situation the extra civil actions, the extra 2 civil actions I would have had because I would have had the crop list completed already, would have been very nice because it would have let me take the Silk Road in addition to the Alchemy. So, not being able to play the Silk Road, definitely not great. I think Silk Road definitely could have been considered. I mean, this Urban Growth, I'll probably need a Happy Face solution of some sort before the end of the age. On the other hand, one possibility is I might be able to get this Forbidden City to help me with my Happy Faces. So maybe that's another reason. Let's take the Silk Road. Forbidden City would also be particularly good with my Monarchy. When Saladin goes away, I'll only be on 5 civil actions, so the Forbidden City giving me my 6th would definitely be quite helpful as well. So leaving myself open for Forbidden City is definitely one good reason not to take the Silk Road. Yeah, I think it's pretty close. I think either play would have been defensible. The Alchemy is probably the safer play, and the Silk Road is probably the higher upside play. Anyway, I discard the aggression, and I, maybe I'll use this with Cavalryman, possibly, and I draw a Trade Route Agreement. Chupacabra disbands a warrior to play a second knight. At least it's cheaper because of the Boudica ability. Still, not where you typically want to be, but I guess they felt they didn't have a choice. Takes an irrigation. Well, at least this means that if TB Starman doesn't get even stronger, then El Chupacabra will be able to use Boudica's regular bonus next turn. On the other hand, TB Starman can pretty easily get stronger just by playing Anziska. Anyway, El Chupacabra also upgrades some farms and takes Jama, interestingly, as a Happy Face solution. As we saw, there is Theta Synergy in the game, though, so that's defensible. Deepest German Seeds reveals the final development of science. Deepest German finally elects the Anziska, increases the population, builds a second knight to become strongest again, and plays the Phalanx tactic, so now they are very much the strongest, and I'm gonna need to definitely get stronger myself if I want to be safe from aggression. In addition, they unfortunately take the Forbidden City window that I was maybe having my eye on, but that's something that you kind of expect sometimes now. One weakness of DB Storman's plan is they're really delaying their second lab by a lot, so the assigned situation is looking a little bit grim at the moment, especially since their Age 1 upgrade is the Iron and not the Alchemy. Now, I didn't want to seed because I'm weakest, and because I have an alternative thing to do with my political action, which is this trade rules agreement. So I did want to propose it so I would have something to do with my political action. I gave it to El Chupacabra, so because I wanted food here. Basically, obviously, DB Starman made this very strong strength push, and I am 1 food short right now of being able to increase my population a second time. I sort of felt the need to build two more infantry in order to get a second tactic going in order to respond to DB Starman. So being able to use rocks as food this turn would be a direct, very specific benefit for me. So the question was, which of my opponents did I want to let use food as resources? And I think that that benefits El Chupacabra more than DB Starman because El Chupacabra has the irrigation going. But I felt that basically that, so I think the choice of who to offer this pack for is it would be less helpful to DB Starman, but DB Starman would be more willing to reject the pact, especially since, like I said, getting this extra population is specifically to counteract DB Starman's strength push. And so the question is, did I want to be very confident and the pact would be accepted because I think it benefits El Chupacabra a lot, or did I want to be less confident the pact would be accepted but it would be a lower upside for my opponent? And I decided that getting this extra population this turn was so important for me that I wanted to be more confident it would be accepted. That's why I offered it to El Chupacabra. So, anyway, I do take the Swordsman. Obviously, this is because I can't get the Knights, and because of DB Starman's strength push, I think this is an absolutely necessary card for me. And I do play it immediately, and I have the rocks to build 2 Swordsmen directly. I actually have just enough rocks to do this after using the Trade Rules Agreement. I had 7 rocks, so that's nice. That gives me 9 strength, which means that I am still technically not able to defend myself unless I take strength with Saladin. We'll discuss that at the end of the turn. The question now is what to do with my remaining 3 civil actions. And one thing that I decide to do, so I take these 2 yellow cards. Now, I think I'll discuss the cultural heritage first. So the next turn is going to be my last turn in Age 1. The age is almost certainly not going to end before my last turn. My opponents don't have enough civil actions, I think, to take 5 total cards that aren't in the discard slot. But the age is definitely going to end after... I'm definitely only going to get 1 more turn in Age 1, which means if I'm going to use this urban growth, it has to be next turn. And right now, I don't have a clear way to use it because I don't have a free population, and I don't have the theology, and the theology could possibly be taken by one of my opponents. So basically, I wanted to be absolutely certain that I could use this Age A urban growth before it's gone. Next turn, I would only have 3 science, not enough to play the alchemy, but the cultural heritage, taking it does give me enough science to play the alchemy. That's why I thought the cultural heritage was an important card for me to take, because taking it, even though it's a little expensive for 2 civil actions, it would not only give me 2 science and 2 culture, but also I felt it would basically give me 1 more resource because it would let me use this urban growth. So it gives me kind of 5 total resources, which I think makes it worth it. That gives me 1 last civil action. I could potentially take the irrigation, but I thought with El Chupacabra already having irrigation, chances were very high that I would be able to get a selective breeding. I can't take Columbus or Taj Mahal, so pretty much the only thing I could do left with that civil action is to take this reserves. At least with Saladin Monarchy, I have a lot of extra civil actions, so taking the reserves should be a fine card for me. It also could potentially let me get another population, notably, because right now, so that actually makes it much better than it would normally be, because I can play it for food and get even an additional population. It would be unhappy, but if I can get a theology, then I would be able to put it into something. So, yeah, I think even in retrospect, these are good. Passing up the Engineering Genius is a little unfortunate, but I also don't have a wonder in play right now. There are powerful H2 wonders that I could definitely use it on, so it's definitely would be a very nice card for me to have, but I thought the cultural heritage guaranteeing me playing alchemy next turn was more important. I also make this interesting play of, while I could take strength from Saladin and be guaranteed to be safe from DB Starman, I decided to play it a little bit risky and take the civil action instead. Now, I think there are 2 major reasons, though, why this risk makes sense to take. First of all, I mean, when you're Saladin and you choose not to take the strength in this situation, I felt that from DB Starman's perspective, I thought that they would likely think, oh, well, if I didn't take the strength, that means that I should be able to defend myself anyway. I would need a second bonus card to defend myself. And so I thought that, you know, kind of ironically, the fact that Saladin can give me strength, I sort of get phantom strength from Saladin in this situation, because from DB Starman's perspective, the fact that I didn't take strength would suggest that I can defend myself even without taking it. The second reason I felt comfortable is DB Starman only has 2 cards in their hand, so I didn't draw, I think I only drew 1 aggression, but with only 2 cards in DB Starman's hand, because they spent so many military actions on their, you know, I think they played 2 tactics and built all these units, I thought that chances were lower than usual that DB Starman has an aggression in their hand. And so, for those 2 reasons, DB Starman's lack of cards and the bluff potential of not taking strength, I thought that it was a reasonable risk for me to take the civil action here instead of the strength. In addition, I think the civil action would be particularly useful for me because I have these 2 yellow cards that I need to spend a civil action to play. So civil actions are more valuable for me right now even than they normally are because of all these cards in my hand I want to play. You know, next turn I want to play the Cultural Heritage, play the Alchemy, upgrade at least 1 Alchemy, so there's a lot I want to do next turn. I draw the Foray. Chupacabra takes the Warfare, plays it, increases the population, builds a second warrior to get stronger than me now because they complete the second tactic, and also is safe from aggressions, so that makes sense. I guess... yeah, never mind. They also take glimpse. Did they use the Pact? It looks like they didn't use the Pact. Yeah, at least not yet. Because the warrior was free thanks to Boudica. They also take Columbus to replace Boudica, so maybe... because of the situation, it's possible they have a colony in hand, but it's also possible that they just didn't want to spend the extra civil action on Gutenberg. And what is hoping to draw a colony in Age 2 with their 3 military actions. We'll see. They do take that Engineering Genius I didn't take, though. Unfortunately, playing the turn this way means that Chupacabra is in corruption, so the 2 rocks that Boudica gave them for military ends up not actually being +2 rocks, because they're eating corruption instead. So, in the end, it looks like Boudica, I think, wasn't a very good leader for Chupacabra in this game, because DB Starman was able to so successfully stay ahead in strength. So that's the risk you can take with Boudica in 3-player games sometimes. DB Starman builds 2 Sieges of Forbidden City, takes a Reserves, and an Alchemy. The Alchemy, I do understand taking this because, as was stated previously, DB Starman is really suffering in science right now. On the other hand, again, you know, building these instead of building the second lab, you know, we'll see DB Starman's science situation later in the game, but DB Starman definitely delayed the second lab, I mean, for the entirety of Age 1, so that's, I think, typically not something you want to do. We can also see, though, that DB Starman did not aggress against me, so the risk I took ended up paying off. Basically, I figured, first of all, I didn't, well, I could have potentially seeded, we'll take a look at the situation, but I decided to cancel this pack because the main reason I proposed it was to get that extra population last turn, and I got it. And now I felt that the chances that I'll be able to use it, because the Reserves is going to get me another population this turn, and then after that, even with the trade routes agreement, it would do literally nothing for me until I got perhaps selective breedings going. So I decided to just cancel it because it served its purpose. So ended up definitely being a good pack for me because Chupacabra wasn't able to use it for the 1 turn it was available to them. I could have potentially seeded, but I mean, I was weakest, so I didn't really want to seed. Foray would be a really risky card. Immigration, possibly, could be good. You know, DB Starman has the Forbidden City, which doesn't help with immigration. But I thought that making sure Chupacabra couldn't use the pact was more important than seeing the immigration this turn, especially since I'm weakest. I can still potentially get into the next deck on my next turn. Anyway, we can see the Cultural Heritage I took ends up paying off and being, I think, the correct choice because it lets me use this urban growth finally. So that gets me out of corruption. There's nothing else I can use my resources on, unless I play this reserves. So kind of for the now I just have to take some cards. I think a number of these cards are potentially good. Iron, I think, probably not for these civil actions, especially because James Watt is in the game. I think James Watt and Railroad is in the game. I think coal is good, so I don't think iron is worth it for these civil actions. I think one of these blue technologies, especially the Could-Have laws, with me being on monarchy, should be highly considered. Theology also, obviously, I would definitely be very helpful for me potentially once the age ends. But even after, yeah, because once the age ends, even if I increase my population, I will still be in rebellion. So I think for that reason, I should take the theology. It kind of hurt passing up the Could-Have laws, but I also wasn't, it's not clear when I might be able to play the Could-Have laws, because I can't play it next turn. By the following turn, I might have something else I want to spend my science on. There are also other ways for me to get that. So actually, I mean, there's the justice system, possibly in H2. So I just felt that because the Could-Have laws, I wouldn't be able to play it next turn, whereas the theology would be directly, immediately very helpful for me next turn because it would get me out of rebellion. Like, if I didn't take this theology, it's not clear how to get out of rebellion. I would probably have to destroy something. So I think this theology is definitely the right card to take here. So now the only question is what to do with my final civil action, and I decide to use my urban growth 1 to upgrade my second lab. I could potentially take a frugality, except that my next population that I increase, I'll have 2 foods. I'll be at 4, so after using the reserves, I'll be at 0 food, which is definitely a very nice food value to be at. If I took the frugality, it would just give me 2 food that would sit around doing nothing. So I think it's definitely better to get the extra science income going earlier. Now, the cost of this is that I'm not able to, say, upgrade a warrior to a swordsman, which would let me, for sure, defend against DB Starman. However, I think I figured if DB Starman didn't aggress against me last turn, there's a good chance it wouldn't aggress against me this turn. I also, now I'm drawing 3 cards, so I have a pretty decent chance even of drawing a second bonus card to defend myself and to make it not a bluff. So I felt that even just being a non-strength, I mean, upgrading 1 or even 2 wouldn't make a difference, at least on the Ultra Macabre seeds. So I thought that it was fine just to ignore my military for this turn and work on my economy instead. I do discard the tactic that I will almost certainly not use. I mean, maybe a cavalry run comes up, but, you know, by then there will probably be H2 tactics. And the foray, I mean, you know, probably I won't want to see it, but maybe. Again, I didn't see the immigration because I'm weakest, and because I don't need to see it this turn to get into the next event deck. And I draw a naval trade agreement, an aggression, and I do indeed draw that second bonus card. So even if DB Starman decides to test my bluff, it ended up not being a bluff. So because of this potential of drawing a second bonus card, and the fact that, again, because I think Saladin is a good bluff card as stated previously, I was comfortable taking the civil action once more. Again, on this turn, the civil action definitely helped me a lot. It got me this extra upgrade in. H2 begins. We can take a quick look at the game situation. Let's get rid of this text box. Let's pretend that Ultra Macabre didn't build the Himeji Castle. So, in terms of game situation, culture is pretty even. Science is definitely in my favor. Rocks are pretty even. Food favors Ultra Macabre, although, well, actually, oh, right, I forgot. I keep forgetting. I really need to work on this. I keep forgetting about Hippocrates token. Right, so the theology wasn't an absolutely necessary card for me to take last turn because of the Hippocrates token, I am able to get out of rebellion, revolt by playing the reserves and increasing my population. Now that would still leave me vulnerable to a potential rebellion in the deck, but that was still a reason to consider to justify taking the Could-Have laws instead of the theology, especially since I'm having alchemies going. The Could-Have laws maybe would have been possible for me to take. So I think when I was actually playing the game, I forgot about the Hippocrates token. It's a major weakness of my game that I forgot about the Hippocrates tokens. So I think that's why I played the theology. So in retrospect, Could-Have laws, I'm not sure what would have been better. I mean, this is definitely the safer pick, but it should have been, I think it's much stronger for that reason because I have the Hippocrates token. Anyway, I do have one more civil action than my opponents, thanks to Saladin and Monarchy. So I think I'm definitely, I do like my position in that sense. I'm definitely, I think, have by far the strongest economy. Now in exchange, though, I am the weakest among all my opponents. El Chupacabra is second weakest, but they have the farms going. DB Starman is the strongest, but they have not upgraded any of the economy. So basically, DB Starman is strongest, but that's the weakest economy. I'm weakest, but that's the strongest economy, and El Chupacabra is kind of in the middle. That being the case, I don't think anyone has a particularly strong or weak position in the game right now. El Chupacabra decides to spend their turn finishing their Magic Castle. This fortunately doesn't make them strongest, but it does help them compete more with strength against DB Starman now. The downside of doing this is an alternative play could have been to take the coal, but they don't have the science to spend on the coal on the iron this turn anyway. So from that perspective, maybe there was, because of El Chupacabra's lack of science and lack of happy faces to put this population into something, maybe the Magic Castle was the only good way to get out of corruption. And it should be a good, it's a pretty good wonder. In a 3-player game, it means that DB Starman is much more incentivized to attack me if DB Starman remains strongest. Gives El Chupacabra more of a chance to get stronger than DB Starman. Also some culture, so. DB Starman finally seeds and reveals a vast territory. I forget how much I bid. I need to be a bit careful about it because of how much strength DB Starman is threatening. So unfortunately, I can't bid for it as much as I might otherwise want to. We can see that on my turn, actually, because I only have 3 rocks, if I bid more than 1 unit, I would not be able to rebuild my army. And so I think I only bid the swordsman and 2 of my bonus cards because I was afraid that if I bid a full army that I wouldn't be able to defend against DB Starman on my turn. So because of that, El Chupacabra ends up winning it with 6. I mean, in order to beat that, I would have had to... I could have beat 2, 4, 5... Yeah, I could have beat that with a full army and both of my bonus cards, but I do think that would have left me vulnerable to aggressions. I mean, maybe that would have been justifiable. It is a strong territory. But El Chupacabra also maybe bid more than this anyway. The forcing them to spend more. I mean, they're spending a lot on it anyway with a full army and a bonus card, but that's worth it for the vast territory. So maybe I could have risked an aggression, but I think I was just kind of feeling I was playing it a little fast and loose already with risking aggressions from DB Starman. I didn't want to tempt fate too much. Anyway, on their turn, DB Starman plays the reserves, which lets them finish the Forbidden City, which is definitely a good card for them. It's definitely a good thing to have. It means they are not vulnerable to rebellion right now. It does, however, mean that they're delaying their lab even longer. They do, however, take a breakthrough to help them a little bit with that science situation. It's my turn. Thanks to El Chupacabra sending away that army to a colony, I am actually not weakest on this turn, so I definitely wanted to take advantage of that. I also think that immigration is a good card for me to have in this situation. It looks like DB Starman is going to be operating off of Forbidden City. El Chupacabra has enough tokens in the yellow bank that they probably won't need to build a second Happy Face anytime soon. So I thought chances were good that I would be able to win this immigration with my theology. And I reveal strategic territory. This one I am able to win really easily. I don't remember how much I bid on it. I probably bid 4 again. This is definitely a very nice territory for me to have. My opponents, I guess, didn't feel they were in a position to rebuild their military sufficiently if they want it. So me not winning the vast territory in exchange let me win this for really cheap. So I think I probably won that territory exchange. Off of it, I draw a very notable card, the Autonomous Territory. So kind of makes me wish I had... Oh, we can see what colony El Chupacabra colonized the inhabited territory for Columbus, which is a good one. Unfortunately, there's no Suez Canal for this. So if I seed it, I'll need to be confident that I can potentially win it. So, but at the very least, maybe me having it means my opponents can't see that. So definitely a card to keep our eye on. Now, even though there is James Watt reared in this game, I decided to take the iron anyway. It's just a nice card to have. I mean, you don't know... Well, first of all, if I didn't take it, there's a chance that El Chupacabra won't take it, and then... Well, I do play before El Chupacabra, so I could probably get the first copy of Cole. On the other hand, you don't know when Cole will come out, you don't know when James Watt will come out. It's always hard to count on James Watt and Cole, like, the problem with Watt Cole, it's extremely strong if you can get it going, but, like, if you need to have them line up well, right? Because if you're delaying your Cole upgrades just because you're waiting for James Watt, then it's like you're not actually getting the resource benefit from James Watt because you're losing the resources you would have otherwise gotten from the Cole upgrades. Now, if you have something else useful to spend those rocks on that aren't Cole upgrades, that can still be fine, but it's still a little, it's pretty swingy, I think, Watt plus Cole with the railroad, and, you know, lining all those up can be tricky, so I just felt safer having the iron in my hand. I don't think... Actually, do I play it this turn? Yeah, I mean, especially since I'm able to play it this turn, thanks to the strategic territory, I am still able to defend against DB Starman even without rebuilding any military units. So I think because I won the territory, I not only don't have to play the theology this turn, but I'm also able to ignore my military and upgrade my mine this turn. So I think because I'm able to upgrade my iron mine studying this turn, that makes this iron good to take. And I mean, I didn't need to spend these rocks to get out of corruption, but also I didn't have anything really better to use these rocks on this turn anyway, since I won the colony. If I hadn't won the colony, I maybe would have passed up the iron and built the theology instead. So that's kind of a sliding doors moment for this game. I do also take the cannon. I don't have a tactic for it yet, but a cannon is an important card to have because so many H2 tactics require it. So it's always just, good to have, especially in my situation where I am on the worst H1 tactics. I really want to get off of this soon if I can. So in order to give me the highest chances of getting an H2 tactic going soon, I think the cannon is a necessary card. So I think these plays up until now do make sense to me. I mean, the iron could be defended. Maybe you could do something else, but I think it does make sense. So the question is what to do. I mean, maybe the journalism, especially with Newton on the row. Another potential option on this turn, I think, would have been instead of taking the iron, I could have taken journalism and Newton, which is a very powerful combination. The problem is that I don't have a lot of free population. I mean, next turn I'll have one, but I'll probably want to put it into military. I mean, right now I'm okay, but DB Starman can definitely get stronger potentially pretty soon, so I felt that it wasn't clear to me that I would be able to get Newton plus journalism going soon, just because I didn't have the free population. If I had won the vast territory, that would be one thing, but I didn't. It's also obviously a heavy civil action cost this turn to take them. It means I wouldn't get the iron upgrades, it means I wouldn't get the cannon. So I think this would be a defensible play, but it would be, I think, high risk, high reward. I wasn't really in a position. I kind of like my position as stated previously because I had a strong economy advantage from my opponents. This iron is giving me an even stronger economy advantage, so I didn't see the need to take a huge risk on potentially getting journalisms with Newton going. That being the case, the question is what to do with my last civil action this turn. And I think there's also a good reason for that. This could have lost that I didn't take on the last turn. Ended up wheeling around to me. And I definitely wanted to have it with my alchemies going and with this giving me a way to get a 6 civil action when Saladin is gone. I think this could be a good card for me, for sure. So the cards I keep, so I basically just got everything except my bonus cards and my autonomous territory. With me getting these military castra, I figured, and also I thought that, I could potentially maybe get the navigation, draw some bonus cards. It seemed like it was at least possible that I might be able to see this territory and win it. And it's definitely a high power card than much higher power card than the other cards I had in my hand. Maybe a little bit unfortunate that I had to discard the naval trade agreement. On the other hand, the naval trade agreement maybe would have expired by the time. Maybe it would have expired by the time. I mean, probably not. I guess these cards in the event deck are probably going to be revealed before H2 ends. But but if I wanted to get the bonus cards, which I definitely did, I had to choose between the territory and the naval trade agreement anyway. So it didn't really make sense to keep the trade agreement while discarding the card that I would want the trade agreement for. And this turn, like I said, I wanted to seed this turn when I wasn't weakest, so kind of lined up that I couldn't keep the naval trade agreement. I drew a promise of military protection, an arms industry, and a popularization of science. All interesting cards. El Chupacabra, on the other hand, maybe this is a weakness of not taking this, because El Chupacabra is able to take Newton plus journalism for cheaper, and with the vast territory, El Chupacabra is definitely in a position to make use of this, so maybe I could have considered cutting Newton and journalism for that reason, but it would have been really costly for me, and in a 3-player game, cutting cards, I mean, it's more, you know, it can be good in a 3-player game to cut cards, definitely, because you only have 2 opponents, but it's something you want to be a little bit careful of. In addition, this is a pretty costly take for El Chupacabra. I guess not, they can't get out of corruption this way, but it does mean that they're not working on their economy at all this turn, notably. So, that's one weakness to this play, but I think this is definitely, obviously, Newton plus journalism, El Chupacabra has farms plus vast territory. This is definitely quite strong for them. DB Starman Seeds reveals Arena of Terror. Unfortunately, I am the weakest when this is revealed, so I think I'm going to have to destroy something, not what you want to see. DB Starman plays the Iron, upgrades once, takes the Architecture, and the Engineering Genius. Architecture, because DB Starman has delayed the second lab so long, I'm not sure if they're going to have enough science to be able to justify this Architecture. We'll see, though. Engineering Genius is definitely a good card with all the power H2 windows in this game. I see Revealed Deposits, which kind of, you know, helps justify the Iron play. We can see there is an early coal that did go around to me, though, so maybe waiting for coal would have also been fine for me in this game. Without the Iron, I would have been able to play it. On the other hand, waiting for coal a little quick. Well, I do have the reserves to help get that first coal grid going, so I think both waiting for coal and taking the Iron that turn were both justifiable options. Anyway, the new deposits is at least able to let me get all my irons going this turn, so that's nice. And I think I definitely want to do it. Now the question is, what else do I want to do? Oh, I lost the warrior to the Reign of Terror. I think that's a pretty natural decision. I think the Cavalryman is also, I mean, I think need it. Like I said, I really want to get an H2 tactic going at some point. So with these 2 cards, I have all I need to be able to play any H2 tactic I might draw. So I think this is an important card to take. So the question now is what to do with my last 2 civil actions. Now, even though I lost this warrior, it only lost me 1 strength. I am still probably in a position to defend myself against DB Starman. At least for bluffing. I mean, I've drawn several H2 cards, so they can probably expect me to have an H2 bonus card at this point in the game. I also might draw 1 on my turn. So I don't think there's a necessity to rebuild my warrior if I don't want to. Maybe you could argue there's not much else to do this turn. Now, instead of taking the Cavalryman, I take the Harvard College. Harvard College definitely would have been nice for me, but I think the Cavalryman is more important, just, you know, especially since I'm weakest right now. I think my major weakness in my position right now is my strength, so I think making sure I can use any H2 tactic is more important than the Harvard College. I also wouldn't be able to complete it next turn. I'm actually 1 rock short of completing it next turn with the reserves, so. I do end up increasing my population taking navigation, though. Now, there's a lot of text in my hand, and 4 science income isn't the biggest. But with the autonomous territory, I think navigation is a potentially very high value card, so I wanted to have it. And even though I have a lot of text in my hand, I mean, I might, you know, who knows when I'll play these 2. Theology, even the theology I don't have to play. Well, I'll probably want to play it relatively soon because of this immigration I seeded. But that's also only 2 science. So, even though there's a lot of text in my hand, the reserves I can get out immediately. I'll be able to play 1 of these next turn. I can potentially play the Could Have Lost to get more hand space. So I think it's okay. And because I have the autonomous territory, I think the navigation is definitely a good card to have. I didn't seed, by the way, because I'm the weakest. Oh no, I did seed. Right, I seeded the arms industry. Right, I seeded the arms industry because I have the cannons and cavalryman, so I figured there was a good chance that I would be able to get at least 4 rocks out of it, maybe even 6. So I thought that was a strong event to have in the deck for me. So I wanted to have it in the deck, so I risked seeding even though I was the weakest, and we can see that seeding paid off for me because it revealed the new deposits. Anyway, yeah, for reasons already stated, I think the navigation is a defensible card to take. And obviously because I take the navigation, I'm keeping the autonomous territory. Popularization of science, I think with El Chupacabra having Newton journalism, this would be a pretty risky card. I mean, it would get me above TB Strumman, but I felt maybe with Newton journalism, El Chupacabra was kind of looking more threatening than TB Strumman at the moment. I draw a scientific cooperation, a wealthy territory, and a ravages. We can see as again, I'm risking an aggression from TB Starman and bluffing that I have the defense card by not taking the strength consolidate. But living on the knife's edge, especially since these are H2 aggressions. But again, I figured if TB Starman hasn't aggressed me yet when I'm doing this, they probably won't aggress me again. And with all the cards in my hand, too, I think the extra civil action is particularly important for me. Anyway, El Chupacabra Seeds reveals the knowledge of the ancients. We all get a little science. Event Eclipse. El Chupacabra elects Newton and is able to build a journalism this turn with the urban growth. So El Chupacabra definitely increases the economic situation and cultural protection substantially this turn. Looking pretty scary. Takes the Kanmon. Good card for them, obviously, and increases the population twice to get out of corruption. And plays a Hussar's tactic, which I think gives them 1 more strength. TB Strumman Seeds, instead of aggressing me, but the border conflict that gets revealed does hit me, unfortunately. TB Strumman finishes upgrading their mines, plays an alchemy, finally builds their second lab, this time directly in alchemy, so at least they're getting a little bit of science going, and takes a revolutionary idea to help with their science. Could have maybe considered the Harvard College help with their science instead, but this also obviously makes sense. Now, I did draw this pack now, and because I'm the weakest, and because I know there's an immigration in this deck that I probably want to reveal, that I want to wait to reveal until I'll be the sole winner of it. I decided that I didn't want to seed this turn, so especially since I have this very powerful pack that I can offer instead. Now, it's a little bit of a difficult question who to offer this pact to. It's a similar situation to the previous pact, where one player is more likely to accept it, but the other player, it helps them a lot less, except reversed. In this case, El Chupacabra obviously is much more likely to accept the pact, but would help them a lot more than it would help DB Starman. Now, because I have all these texts in my hand, and they're all relatively cheap, this scientific cooperation is going to help me a lot. So, for that reason, you could argue, even though it would also help El Chupacabra a lot, maybe I should have offered it to them, because it kind of would have helped us equivalently. On the other hand, as said previously, I was kind of feeling El Chupacabra was in a better position than TB Starman at the moment. Anyway, I mean, TB Starman has some stuff going. El Chupacabra still is only on bronze mines. TB Starman is stronger, though that will change once TB Starman gets rid of Ziska. But I just felt that Newton journalism is so powerful, getting El Chupacabra now 5 culture income, 6 science income. El Chupacabra just looks in a pretty scary position right now. So I felt that even if the scientific cooperation pact would be about equally beneficial to both of us, it wouldn't. If El Chupacabra is my main competition, and I felt like they were, it wouldn't advance my position in terms of winning first if I offered the pact to them. And it maybe would make it more likely that I would finish second ahead of TB Starman, but I'm also kind of in a position in my group where I want to win first, and also just in general, you always would rather win than come in second, obviously. And also, I felt that there was probably a good chance that El Chupacabra would benefit from the pact more than me. I mean, the pact is going to help me a lot in the short term for sure, but also help El Chupacabra in the short term. And also, I think the final decision, well, I guess not, because El Chupacabra, never mind. El Chupacabra wouldn't be able to play the Kanmon on their turn even with the pact, because I would play 2. Yeah, that I would cost them science when I played my tech cards. But while in the short term the pact would benefit me more than El Chupacabra, I didn't have a clear path anytime soon to getting more science income. Whereas El Chupacabra with the 6 science income, and also with Newton giving them a civil action refund when they play techs, the scientific cooperation pact is just so good for Newton, and I felt that chances were it would probably help El Chupacabra more than me in the long run. Whereas it would definitely help me more than DB Starman. Now, for that reason, it's less likely that DB Starman would accept this pact. I was actually a little surprised that DB Starman accepted this pact, just because we'll see this turn just how good it is for me to have these cheap techs even cheaper. On the other hand, maybe I can also kind of understand DB Starman's position. I mean, we are both going to probably be on Alchemies by DB Starman's next turn. They also have this Revolution idea that they can play. They also probably want to play this Architecture. So I can also kind of understand it from DB Starman's position, where they figured, because we'll have equivalent science income and because they have this revolutionary idea, that maybe the two of us will end up benefiting about equally from the pact. So maybe DB Starman benefits from the pact more than I perhaps thought they did at the time. But I do remember being pleasantly surprised that it was accepted. Anyway, it's definitely very good for me as well. See that it was accepted. It will save me a ton of science. So, I do want to play the Theology. I ended up destroying my temple to the border conflict because I was planning on just rebooting at this turn anyway, both to get me out of rebellion and also to help me with the immigration that I ceded. So I definitely wanted to do that. Question was else to do with my next turn. Now, the strategy felt like a very strong card for me. I mean, it's a strong card in general, at least when you can play it. Here it's available for me for one civil action, and with the Scientific Cooperation Pact, I thought that there was a good chance that I would be able to play at this game, so I definitely wanted to take it. Now, there's kind of an interesting question which of these I can play. So I can basically play two of these blue technologies. I could also play a military technology, but I unfortunately still don't have a tactic for them, so it didn't feel particularly helpful. I think there's a case to be made for all of them. Obviously, the Code of Laws would be very good to get me an extra civil action going. Both the navigation strategy would both give me strength. Strategy would give me military actions, so that if I build more military units, it would let me draw more cards. Also keep more cards in my hand, which I might want to. Ravages of Time would be I think a pretty nice card to have in the deck. I mean, losing Acropolis might be painful for me, especially if I want an H3 government form, though. DB Starman it would be pretty good for after losing the Colossus heading into H3. After H3 begins. It would hurt El Chupacabra maybe a fair amount, though, because they would lose the pyramids. So definitely a card I might want to keep. This is also a wealthy territory that I definitely would want to keep, especially since I had the navigation. So I think but playing the navigation this turn would also help in case my opponent ceded colonies. So I think there's a case to be made for all of these blue technologies. I ended up playing the strategy, though, I think mainly because I wanted to keep these in my hand. Because I have this navigation, I figured that I wanted to keep both of these colonies in my hand to potentially seed. And so the strategy letting me keep more cards in my hand ended up being a deciding factor for me in playing it. I also took a breakthrough to help me. Now, there's a notable thing. Here's an important thing to note. I did not play the Code of Loss this turn, even though I could have. And the reason is because I took this breakthrough instead. DB Starman on their next turn is almost certainly going to play at least one technology, maybe two, with the revolutionary idea. And so if I played the Code of Laws this turn, the next turn I would have less than 4 science. I would have 2 or 3, and that would leave me unable to play any of these cards, including potentially, I think, one of these military technologies might be very important for me to play next turn if I draw a tactic. And so, in order to leave open the possibility of playing one of these cards next turn, especially since I take the breakthrough. So now I take the breakthrough, that means that next turn I will be able to play 2 of these cards for sure. Whereas if I play the Code of Laws this turn, I wouldn't be able to play any technologies next turn. So I thought that leaving open the possibility was worth losing the extra civil action from not playing the Code of Laws. I could have potentially taken Catherine instead, although it's not clear whether I would be able to use Catherine's ability on my turn. And I thought that there were some other good leaders for me potentially on the deck, such as Nobel, Gotti, maybe James Cook with my colonies in my hands, maybe Bach if I get an opera is there. There's one opera left in the deck, so I thought there were enough good leaders left in the deck. I didn't need Catherine this turn. And the breakthrough, obviously, very nice card to have when you're on, especially when you're on the Scientific Cooperation. So I think even in retrospect, this turn makes sense. I finally draw a tactic, and because I only have these two units, it's actually one that I can potentially use, especially if we win a colony, the fortifications. I also draw a terrorism and a politics of strength, the terrorism in particular, because I am indeed, it's looking like I will be lower in culture than my opponents. This could be a very powerful card for me if I play it right. Chupacabra Seeds reveals an immigration. The immigration that I seeded, so revealed just in time for me to be the sole winner of it, which is definitely very nice. Chupacabra ends up doing a Newton Revolution. That is definitely a strong thing to do, so I think that makes sense. And they also play a drama, which also gives them a civil action refund, and builds one to get out of corruption. But a drama, a bit of an interesting choice, perhaps, since they have Newton and not Bach. On the other hand, as we saw previously, there is a lot of theater synergy in terms of H3 leaders, so that makes sense to me. Maybe, the architecture definitely should have been strongly considered, I think, from El Chupacabra, because it would let them get extra journalisms a lot easier. Maybe, and I think that they could have gone out of corruption. Maybe, I guess they wouldn't have been able to get out of corruption though without this theater. In order to get out of corruption, if they hadn't done it this way, they would have had to increase the population to get out of corruption. So taking the architecture would put them in corruption this turn, which I guess probably wasn't worth it. So if they preferred this theater over maybe putting population into the military, that makes sense to me. DB Starman Seeds reveals the Rebellion. Also, a good timing on this for me. It doesn't hit anyone. DB Starman takes the Transcontinental Railroad. Even though they're on iron mines, at least will help them maintain their strength, the amount of strength they're threatening once they lose Ziska, which will be soon. And they also take the Selective Breeding. That will obviously be a necessary card for them. And they disbanded Warrior to build another Knight. Perhaps in preparation for copying the Hussars tactic. Oh no, they have a mobile artillery tactic, so that's why they're planning on using this tactic. Maybe a little bit of risky though, because El Chupacabra is playing before them and is definitely heavily incentivized and has the civil actions to take a cannon for 3 if it's available to them. So a little bit of a risky play here. Notably, DB Storming didn't play any text, so I could have played the Could Have Lost last turn and still had 4 science available this turn, but obviously I didn't know that on my turn. Now, I'm not weakest on my turn, so I see that I did see the terrorism. Now, that's certainly a risky card to seed, because you don't know how the culture situation might turn out in future turns. But it kind of seemed to me, I mean, even with seeding, my culture production is a lot less than El Chupacabra's. It's not much less than DB Starman's, but DB Starman is 9 culture ahead of me right now, and is probably more likely than me to seed in the future too. So I thought that I should be able to finagle winning the terrorism, and obviously I wanted it in the next event deck. And if I do win it, especially destroying El Chupacabra's journalism would be a really big get. So I wanted it in the deck. I guess I also kind of thought that even if DB Starman wins it, at least because El Chupacabra was looking more threatening, DB Starman destroying El Chupacabra's journalism and one of my urban buildings would also be a reasonable result. Anyway, real refugees, and it's a good thing I seeded when I wasn't the weakest, so I don't get hit by it. Now I definitely wanted to play that Could Have Lost finally, as well as a cannon. Now that I finally have an H2 tactic, I want to start building into it, so I'm not weakest anymore. I also don't really have... I mean, I could have gotten selective breeding upgrades instead, but I have some free population lingering anyway, so I thought that not being weakest, I thought most of these cards were seeded by DB Starman, and so I thought there was a very good chance that these were additional strength events, and so not being weakest after my turn felt like it was more important. I might even get the... Okay, so I decided to get to the opera. So one thing I could have done this turn is I have the science to play the selective breeding and the rocks to upgrade it once. I think these 2 yellow cards are definitely nice to have. The frugality will get me some extra population easier. The rich land will make these selective breeding upgrades easier. So taking these 3 cards makes a lot of sense to me. The opera maybe is a bit of a more questionable choice. when I could have instead done a selection beating upgrade. The logic was basically I need to think about who my H2 leader is going to be. James Cook felt a little optimistic. I mean, I do have this one territory. I do have these 2 more plus the navigation I could feed. So James Cook could definitely be reasonable, but he's also pretty risky. Whereas the Opera could potentially help me with Gotti and Nobel. And so I basically thought that, you know, next turn I'm going to want to take a leader, and I don't know who it's going to be. And so the Opera basically makes 2 of the potential leaders I might get a lot better. I mean, obviously it makes Bach playable, and it makes Gotti a lot better. And if I don't take one of these, James Watt is really bad for me. Because I have my mine upgrades already. I mean, maybe I could take him for my farm upgrades and hope to get an early oil, but that's risky. James Cook is also risky. Nobel could be fine, but also I thought that DB Starman was heavily incentivized to take Nobel. Actually, Nobel would be good for me, especially because of the scientific cooperation. But again, DB Starman plays before me, and I thought that DB Starman would also really want Nobel. So I took the Opera basically to give me an additional range of leaders I could take next turn, and I valued that over getting the extra food next turn. So that logic I think makes sense, but not getting this upgrade, especially since this farm upgrade would let me increase my population next turn. On the other hand, I'll be able... I guess another reason not to do the upgrade this turn is that next turn I'll probably finally play these reserves for food to get an extra pop. And so the extra 2 food wouldn't actually benefit me next turn because I'll get the 2 food from the reserves. And so as long as I get 2 of these farm upgrades in next turn, it won't be that much worse to delay one of those upgrades. So that's another reason why I felt comfortable taking this Opera instead of 1 farm upgrade. It was a close decision though, and I think getting the farm upgrade would also be very good and maybe even better, arguably. It's a little, you know, it's always a little hard to say. We'll see how much this Opera ends up helping me. As for the cards that I keep, I obviously want to keep my tactic. I want to keep my colonies. Because the age is about to end, a very good case can be made actually for discarding these bonus cards. I might end up doing that. I discarded 1 bonus card, so I also discard... I seeded the wealthy territory, so I discarded... forget the event I discarded. With my issue tactic, policy of strength can definitely be helpful. Autonomous territory. I didn't discard. There's my territory, yeah. So, right, I see the terrorism. I don't remember what card was on my hand I discarded, but yeah, I'll probably not use this age 1 bonus card anyway, so I could have definitely discarded it instead. But I figured there was a chance that another colony could be revealed before the age ends, and I already have all these other cards in my hand. I would prefer seeding before the thing that I discarded. So might open the migration. Anyway, yeah. I draw another tactic, one that I am not prepared for there, so it won't be useful, as well as 2 packs. International Trade Agreement, definitely a powerful pack, but probably not as good as the Scientific Cooperation. So these are probably bad draws. Jikarasu does indeed take the second cannon, not a surprise. Also takes reserves for 2 notably, but with Newton and with 7 civil actions, they can definitely afford the civil action cost. Plays the Code of Laws, takes the wave of nationalism, definitely good, especially with their lack of rocks. They haven't, you know, they're spending a long part of the game on bronze mines, and maybe won't even be able to upgrade coal this game. We'll see. Increase the population, builds another knight to maybe not be vulnerable to aggression, maybe just to spend that military action to compete in strength a little bit more, even though they're still weakest. Takes urban growth, and increases the population again. Notably, they don't take this rifleman, but it looks like they're planning on operating off of hussars. Notably, they don't take the cavalryman either, which would help them with hussars, but they valued... I mean, the wave of nationalism, obviously very strong for them. Urban growth, definitely if they want a second journalism or a second drama or something, could also be. Second drama actually might be important because their next pop after the age ends is going to be unhappy. So maybe they're planning on using this for the drama. That would make sense. So these yellow cards should also be good for them. Maybe better than the cavalryman would be. Maybe they're also planning on copying the mobile artillery tactic with the cannons. DB Starman plays the architecture and the engineering genius to finish the transcontinental railroads, making them the strongest by a lot again. And also takes the Republic, plays the revolutionary idea, and ends their turn. Republic, maybe they're planning on doing a revolution next turn. Might be a little hard for them to play. But this one also makes sense. Obviously, the railroad's going to help them. The architecture is also potentially going to help. I mean, if they didn't play the architecture, they wouldn't have had the science. Wait. Okay, they would have had the science for the Republic this turn if they hadn't played the architecture. So I think the Republic would have been better because it would have also given them, this saved them 2 civil actions, but this would have given them an extra 3 civil actions, right? So this would give them 1 more civil action, then additional civil action in the future. This is going to make their urban upgrades easier, but with the Transcontinental Railroad, I think civil actions are more important to DB Starman right now than resources. So I think the Republic would have been better this turn. So that was the politics of strength. I think I didn't seed the colonies yet because I probably wasn't going to play my navigation this turn. So I wanted to wait until I had the navigation in play before I seeded those colonies. And the politics of strength, I guess I had a plan to get strongest on my turn. So I thought the politics of strength could be a good card for me. It would also be a punish for El Chupacabra, obviously. Anyway, I reveal the arms industry. Which does indeed give me 4 rocks. My opponent's only 2, so this ended up being a good event for me. I do... Okay. This is one of the important turns in the game for me, because it's a question of which H2 leader I want. I obviously want one of them. The H is going to end this turn. So, as stated previously, I mean, James Watt maybe, but a bit risky. James Cook maybe, but I'm not seeing the colonies. I mean, maybe I should have, if I took James Cook, I would have seen the colony, but also he's worth doing the civil actions. So I think really the choice was probably between Gotti and Nobel. And I kind of surprised myself in choosing Gotti, because I definitely was thinking Nobel first when the turn began. Obviously, Nobel is just, in general, a good leader to have, and especially with my scientific cooperation, it would help me get more with that. However, after thinking it, another reason to take Nobel over Gotti is because obviously I have the terrorism in the deck, and so the extra culture I get from Gotti might end up costing me the terrorism if it takes a while for the terrorism to be revealed. On the other hand, for a couple of reasons, I thought Gotti could be very good for me. First of all, I didn't think I would need the strength from Nobel, probably, as we'll see in this turn. So really, it would be the science from Nobel that would be helpful for me. The thing about Nobel that I've come to realize, I think Nobel is a strong leader, but he's much stronger at the beginning of H2 and in the middle than at the end, because the main benefit from him is this extra science income it gives you, which you want going as early as possible, obviously. When you get Nobel at the end of H2 like this, though, then it gives you much less science, and the main benefit of the card kind of stops being the science and becomes more the Nobel prizes. And obviously with El Chupacabra, I mean, they might lose Newton eventually, but they have more potential to get science production than I do. So the Nobel prizes have a very good chance of benefiting El Chupacabra more than me. In addition, the science savings that Gotti gives me might end up being about the same as what I would get from Nobel, especially if I get an early H3 leader. And there are definitely some H3 leaders I might want to get early. So because of that, and because, you know, looking at my situation, right, like right now I'm not behind in culture, but that's going to change pretty quickly as the turns go on and the culture production from El Chupacabra starts increasing more and more. There also, in this game, aren't a lot of ways to get culture quickly in H3. You know, I could try a big war potentially, but there's Ghani in this game. There's neither of the 2 power wonders. There's neither Hollywood nor Spaceflight. I've actually felt that in this game, the most powerful wonder is the internet because of all the synergistic leaders there are with internet. And Gotti, obviously, is also very synergistic with internet. So that's another reason to favor Gotti. And just overall, like I said, in this game, it sort of felt... I was sort of worried about how I was going to win, how I was going to overtake, especially El Chupacabra in culture. And without those power H3 wonders, with Gandhi and also, you know, wars in general are a tricky thing to rely on. You know, maybe I won't get the air forces, and maybe I'll only have this fortifications tactic. I don't have a super strong economy. I'm only on iron mines. You know, I don't have a ton of military actions either with my monarchy. I mean, again, maybe I would get the fundamentalism or something, but that's a lot of maybes going into the big war. Now, El Chupacabra is a little bit vulnerable to a war because they're still on bronze mines. On the other hand, they do have a bunch of civil actions and a bunch of science, so they can potentially get some nice tax or some nice yellow cards to help them defend themselves. They also have the Himeji Castle to help them defend themselves, and again, there's Gandhi in the game. So going for a big war felt risky for all those reasons. Going for just a comeback in Age 3 peacefully also looked harder than it normally might be. And especially because it's a 3-player game. You know, 3-player games are kind of in between. 2-player games, you want to push culture. 4-player games, you want to worry about your military and economy. 3-player games are kind of in between, where kind of all of the potential routes to success are about equally viable, I think. And so, for all those reasons, and because I have previously seen Gotti do good work in 3-player games in the past, I valued Gotti over Nobel. He's also worth 1 civil action cheaper, so a little bit, not a leader I normally take, especially over Nobel in this situation, but for those reasons stated, I felt better, and he might make it harder for me to win terrorism, but I thought I will still be lowest in culture for at least several more turns, and the terrorism is in this deck, so I thought there was still a good chance I would win it. And again, as previously stated, even if DB Strumman wins it, that would be okay, because El Chupacabra would lose this journalism, which is the main thing I'm looking for, and I can also play around having something too expensive destroyed by the terrorism. Anyway, I do want to upgrade my farms, obviously, with the rich land. So another question. So now, after the choice of taking Gotti over Nobel, I have 3 civil actions left. I could take the ocean liner service. However, my experience with the ocean liner service, everyone knows it's a very strong wonder, and it is. Early or mid H2. In this case, however, it's available at the end of H2. If I finished it, it would be next in the beginning of H3. And by then, it becomes a lot less appealing, because I'd be spending 6 civil actions on it, right? So it wouldn't really save me any civil actions, because there's probably only going to be about maybe 6 or 7 turns left in the game anyway. So really the main reason to get it at this point in the game would be the food savings. But because I'm on selective breedings, if I increase my population with ocean liner service, I'll still have a ton of food lying around that I'll need to spend at some point or be able in corruption. I think if there was a red cross in the game, ocean liner service would definitely be a good card to take even this lane in H2, because the food I would save from popping with ocean liner service I would spend on red cross, but there is not red cross in this game. So because of that, I thought that the ocean liner service, the 10 rocks and 6 civil actions I would spend on it would not give me concomitant value because it's so late in H2. So instead, I want to, well, you know, build my second cannon so I can play my tactic up, you know. I also want to play I end up playing the sorcerers, notably not for food, but for rocks. I think, even though I said previously that one reason I delayed the upgrade was to increase my food, I mean, maybe in retrospect that wasn't a good reason, because we can see that after the Agens, that my next 2 pops will be 4 food, but the one after that will be 5 food. And so the extra 2 food here would get me an additional 2 pops next turn, but then the turn after that, I wouldn't get a bonus pop from playing it for food. And so that's why I played it for rocks instead. I, you know, especially with Gotti, and I was going to want to build maybe operas and stuff, so I felt that I would end up needing the rocks more than the food, the way things ended up playing out. So maybe I should have upgraded the farm last turn, although I think the opera I took instead, notably, ended up making Gotti a good leader to take, so this opera ended up being good, too. So it was a close decision. I also have the frugality notably, so the frugality is going to get me an extra pop even without spending the reserves for food or upgrading the farm last turn. So that's another reason that I played the game this way, because I had the frugality. Anyway, with the fortifications, I am now actually strongest, which is definitely nice. And with my last 2 save actions, take the breakthrough. I mean, efficient upgrade, maybe, although at this point in the game it wasn't clear whether I would be upgrading any of my buildings ever again. The reserves would definitely be nice, but I felt that especially with the scientific cooperation pack, the breakthrough was too good. Maybe another reason to value Gaudi over Nobel is because letting DB Sturman have Nobel will make it more likely that they won't cancel this pact, right? Because right now, I'm obviously benefiting from the pact a lot more than they are. But if they take Nobel, they might have hopes that they'll be able to benefit from it as much as me, because they'll get the extra science income over me. So that's maybe another sneaky reason to take Gaudi over Nobel. Age 3 begins, so we can take a look at the situation in the game. Culture is looking pretty even at the moment. DB Starman is a bit ahead, but that'll change soon with the less culture production. Ultra has more culture production than me, but not by that much. So, you know, benefit of taking Gaudi, right? I'll be able to keep pace with Ultra Macabra's culture. Ultra Macabra, however, is definitely ahead in science, with production and with Nobel. DB Starman is ahead in rocks with the railroad. I am currently ahead in food production, though, with my scientific methods. But the civil and military action situation benefits Ultra Macabra, but the strength situation benefits me. So overall, I would say that Ultra Macabra has the strongest economy. I have the strongest military situation, obviously. DB Starman, especially the civil and military action situation, as well as the science situation, is looking pretty bad. So I think DB Starman is pretty clearly in the weakest position at the moment. As for who's better between me and Ultra Macabra, I would probably favor Ultra Macabra right now just because of their civil actions mainly, and they have the culture advantage right now with production, so I'm gonna have to catch up. The main weakness of Ultra Macabra's position, though, is that they're only on bronze mines. The second copy of coal ended up being one of the last cards in the deck, so if I want to win this game, I'm gonna need to take advantage of my increased resource production, whereas Ultra Macabra will probably have to compensate with yellow cards. Ultra Macabra now plays the cannons, plays the Wave of Nationalism, which lets them build one cannon and a second one after disbanding warriors, and they do indeed copy that mobile artillery tactic, so now Ultra Macabra is actually the strongest, but they sacrifice drawing any cards this turn to do that. In addition, they increase the population again, take an efficient upgrade, and a second efficient upgrade, builds a theater, and takes the rifleman. Perhaps they're planning on using these efficient upgrades for the coal. They could potentially consider just not upgrading their mines at all this game. Because they have so many civil actions, they can potentially subsist off of yellow cards, I think, for their resources. But having these 2 efficient upgrades does make even this late of a coal, they might end up upgrading their coals second turn at age 3, not what you want to do. But the efficient upgrades will make it a lot easier to bear doing that. So with these efficient upgrades, this coal might still end up finding them value. And they take the rifleman instead this turn because they wanted to make sure DB Storman didn't take it. They probably figured that neither me nor DB Storman would take this coal, which is probably true. DB Starman takes Nobel as expected, adopts the Hussars tactic instead of mobile artillery because they lost Ziska. So that mobile artillery tactic ended up perhaps benefiting Ultra Macabra more than it benefited DB Starman. And they take a revolutionary idea. Understandable, because to help with the scientific cooperation pact. On the other hand, it does mean that they'll have corruption. Maybe upgrading the lab could be considered as well. But maybe they wouldn't have had a better thing to do with their last 2 civil actions after upgrading the lab. And the revolutionary idea definitely will be very helpful for them. Anyway, it's my turn. So, as the weakest, I think I do want to seed, and I definitely want to seed because I want to get that terrorism out of my hand as soon as possible. This is a tricky turn for me in a number of ways, but we'll discuss that in a bit. I want to seed to get that because I want to, now that my opponent seeded, I really want to get the event deck moving to get the terrorism out. And I end up seeding the autonomous territory. I think I'm planning on playing the navigation soon, so I felt safe seeding it now. Independence Declaration is revealed. It doesn't affect anyone. Now, I think there are 2, well, maybe 3 things of note on the row right now. First is these wonders, but I think that it's probably too early to take these wonders, especially here. I think there's a good chance they'll wheel around because my opponents might have better things to do than these wonders anyway. So I think rather than the wonders, the two important cards on the row are Einstein and Air Forces. Air Forces, I think we all know why they're good. They're, you know, obviously make it much easier to get strength. Einstein, I think in general is one of the most powerful Age 3 leaders, but I think in this situation right here, he's particularly strong because there's this early multimedia too. And Einstein multimedia is one of the most powerful Age 3 combinations in the game. And here's especially notable, if I don't take either of them, then El Chupacabra is going to take them. And El Chupacabra is not only my strongest competition, but they're also very well set up to take advantage of Einstein multimedia because they already have this journalism going, and it sort of fits with their general strategy in the game, I think. So, I want to take one of these, either the Air Forces or Einstein multimedia. I can't really take both. I mean, I could potentially take Air Forces and Einstein and eat Corruption, but taking Einstein myself seemed bad. Probably one of my opponents was going to take the multimedia, and it would kind of be depending on either the second multimedia or maybe a computer that's coming soon. Didn't feel great to me. Even though I do think Einstein is a very powerful leader, just with only being on alchemies, it's pretty questionable to take him. At least it's really risky. And so I think if I'm taking Einstein, I do want to take him with the multimedia, so I have something guaranteed that I can use him with. Now, doing that does mean I would suffer Corruption, then I'm going to give up the Air Forces. I think it is a close call, though, because like I said, Einstein multimedia is so good for El Chupacabra, and it would be very good for me, too, obviously. So, I think it's a close decision, and the one I end up coming to, I'm still a little doubtful about. I end up, well, we can see what I end up doing. I end up taking the Air Forces. It was a little bit, maybe, of a default choice, because obviously, you know, in general, you want to take the Air Forces when you can. It's also good for me because it lets me get out of Corruption. We can see I can get out of Corruption. I play the Frugality to pop twice, and then I can build a cannon. So doing it this way gets me out of Corruption, but this gives me only 4 civil actions left to take cards. I could potentially take Einstein, and like I said, just hope maybe that the multimedia will wheel around to me, or hope that I'll get a second one, or computers with it. That would definitely be a defensible play. Like I said, Einstein is a powerful leader. However, it just felt too risky for me, especially since I was giving up this Air Forces. If I don't take this Air Forces, El Chupacabra will. JB Starman plays before me, they'll probably get the second Air Forces. Now, with the Fortifications tactic, it's, you know, better than it might otherwise be, because the Fortifications tactic, I think, is pretty strong even without Air Forces, because you only need 2 units to get a full tactic, but it still might be a little scary. Now, maybe my opponents aren't necessarily threatening that much strength yet, although El Chupacabra perhaps could have given the Air Forces in enough time. Like I said, I think it's a close decision, and maybe taking Einstein multimedia and Corruption, or maybe just taking Einstein and, you know, hoping to get... Now, I can't subsist off of Gotti for a little while longer and just wait to play Einstein until I get computers and multimedia. That could also certainly be defensible, and maybe would have been better than taking the Air Forces here. I also, you know, I play this, you know, I want to do it. I seeded the colony. There might be more colonies in the deck. Playing this also gets me stronger than El Chupacabra, so I think it's definitely right to play the navigation. Another reason, you know, if I took Einstein, the fact that he's 1 civil action cheaper, maybe it doesn't matter because I don't have anything else really obvious to do with the civil action. I mean, maybe play the Opera preemptively or something, but... yeah, looking at this again, I'm not sure about this. Not to say I think taking Einstein was right, I just think it's really close between them. And even in retrospect, it's not clear to me which of these would have been better. I just got the tactic I won't use, and I draw Impact of Happiness, Impact of Science, and the bonus card Impact of Science might be difficult to seed, but maybe I can set myself up for it. Impact of Happiness, I can definitely set myself up for, so decent impact draws. El Chupacabra tries an aggression against DB Starman, but it fails. Chupacabra does indeed decide to get these cool upgrades in with the efficient upgrades. With the reserves and the efficient upgrades, they can even get 2 upgrades in this turn, so that's definitely good. That probably makes this value. And they do take Einstein Multimedia, not unexpected. I left this for them, so. As we know, very powerful combination. So good turn from them. TB Stone plays a revolutionary idea, which lets them get a democracy this turn. That definitely helps them a ton. It fixes their government situation and kind of fixes their cultural situation, so that's definitely good for them. They also build 4th Knights, so that they are not weakest, and they take the 2nd Air Forces. So at least El Chupacabra will be without Air Forces. We can see that if I hadn't taken that Air Forces, I wouldn't have gotten Air Forces. So that fact justifies me taking Air Forces here. And they finally upgrade that lab. They do, however, have to eat corruption. Okay, so, well, first of all, I see the 2nd colony. And I reveal a national pride. Unfortunately, El Chupacabra gets it. Okay. Well, we see what I did. I think this is my biggest decision turn of the game. Because this is the turn where I had to decide, how do I want to win this game? And I think there were 2 good options here. One option is Fundamentalism Manhattan Project. Taking that would basically be me saying, I'm planning on getting a big war against El Chupacabra. The Fundamentalism plus the strategy would give me 7 military actions, so even if El Chupacabra got Gandhi, I would still be able to war them. I only have 1 military action left, so I would need to set myself up for it beforehand, but also with the Manhattan Project, that would give me a way to get strength without spending military actions. So definitely Fundamentalism plus Manhattan Project had the potential to get me a ton of strength. You know, I have the Air Forces, El Chupacabra doesn't. In addition, very important note. So, without the Air Forces, El Chupacabra's strength potential is a lot more limited. And I definitely have the potential, like I said, with the Manhattan Project and the Fundamentalism, to threaten a lot of strength against El Chupacabra. I think that would definitely be a good thing to do, and a way to win this game. I think there's another potential way to win this game, which is a peaceful way. Because I have Gaudi, and because there's this internet, I figured with the engineering, that would let me get some really cheap urban buildings. That would not only give me culture with Gaudi, but would also help me with the internet. We'll see how I take the internet too. The internet, I feel that a lot of people disrespect it as a winter. I think it's definitely weaker than Spaceflight and Hollywood in most games. But it has a lot of potential, though. I think in some ways, I mean, not higher potential than Hollywood, but I actually have had a 50 plus culture. I think it was a 52 or 54 culture internet once. Now that took a lot of doing. But that ceiling for the card is definitely there. And I am in a position to potentially achieve that ceiling too, I think. Because I have Gaudi, and because there's these synergistic leaders in the game, the theater leaders plus Sid Meier. Sid Meier works very well with internet in particular. So I thought that the internet had a lot of potential in this game too. And I'm not that far behind. I mean, I'm kind of far behind. After my turn, I'm going to be 17. I think I'm going to play the opera this turn. But I'm going to be about 15 culture behind El Chupacabra with less culture production. So I'm a little bit behind El Chupacabra, but certainly not an insurmountable deficit. And so I did think about this a long time. And the conclusion I basically came to was... if it's possible for me to win peacefully, I should go for the peaceful victory, because I don't have a war in my hands. Now, it's still early in Age 3. I'll still have plenty of opportunities to draw a war, but there's always a chance that you don't. And I have had games where I've drawn 3 cards a turn in Age 3, and won a Strategic Territory 2 in Age 3, and still not drawn a war until it was too late for me to play it. So it's entirely possible to never draw a war in Age 3, or to not draw a war until it's the second to last turn and it's too late. And so when you commit to a military strategy without a war in your hand, there's always an inherent risk to that. There are enough wars in the deck that it's a reasonably calculated risk. I'm not going to bother calculating it now. But yes, chances are high that I will draw at least 1 war this game. And so I think going the war strategy here would definitely be defensible. But I thought that even though there's a high chance that I'll draw a war, that chance is not 100. And so, without having a war in my hand already, I didn't feel comfortable taking that risk when I thought that I should be able to win this game peacefully and not depend on my event deck draws. So that's why I decided to go for the peaceful route in the end. So like I said, I did take the internet, and I can get out of corruption by disbanding a swordsman and bidding cannon. Not where you want to be, obviously, especially with the colonies in the deck, but it does get me out of corruption, at least, so I thought that that made it justifiable. I think a lot of players would have gone Fundamentalism Manhattan Project, and like I said, I think that would have been entirely defensible. We'll see. I think my play is at least justifiable. If not, it's at least potentially less risky, like I said, because it doesn't depend on drawing a war. However, that's only if I am right that I am capable of winning peacefully, of catching up to El Chupacabra peacefully. So we'll have to see if I ended up being right in that judgment. As for cards to keep, I think I ended up tossing away the Pact and the Aggression. Yeah, I think that's natural. I draw an Impact of Architecture, which definitely maybe this draw definitely rewarded me for the choice that I made. Impact of Architecture obviously goes very well with the internet plan. And I did an Impact of Strength, and maybe we'll see. And I didn't draw a war, so I was kind of thinking, I'll probably draw 2 wars now, right? Because I didn't go military, but I ended up not drawing any wars, which made me feel better about my decision. Chupacabra takes the revolutionary idea for 3 civil actions. They can't afford it, obviously. And they take reserves also, so spending a lot of civil actions on yellow cards this turn, because they didn't like any of these other cards on the row. They do elect Albert Einstein this turn. Even though, yeah, I guess they're not playing a tech this turn, right? So, and it's not like they're lacking hand space. I think maybe it would have been better to keep Newton, because just to have the option of refunding the civil actions of the culture, unless of course there's an iconoclasm in the deck. If El Chupacabra sees an iconoclasm, then electing Einstein this turn makes sense. Maybe also El Chupacabra is worried that one of their opponents seeded Iconoclasm, although neither of us have shown much neither of us have been in a hurry to replace our leaders, so I think this play makes sense if El Chupacabra seeded Iconoclasm, but if they didn't, maybe keeping Newton to have the option of refitting the civil action next turn would have been better. Unfortunately, neither of my opponents seed on their turns, so that terrorism is still winning in the deck. TV Summon instead upgrades their farms, takes their rockets, and a revolutionary idea. So I think I got none of the revolutionary ideas. Yeah, so that's unfortunate. They do, however, have to suffer corruption because of this play. I did want to seed, obviously, not only my strongest, but I also really want to get that terrorism out. This might be the last turn that I'll win the terrorism. So I really wanted to seed. So the question of which event to seed, and I think that's also natural. Because I have committed myself at this point to the internet plan, the Impact of Architecture is very likely to be a good one for me. Whereas all the other impacts, it's more questionable whether they'll be good for me or not. And thankfully the terrorism was revealed. I mean, 1 in 3 chance this turn, it was, higher than 50% chance is one of the first 3 cards in the deck, but definitely, I was extremely happy to see this revealed now, and so I didn't have to worry about it. Obviously destroy El Chupacabra's journalism. Now they will be able to rebuild it as multimedia, so it won't cost them a civil action, but it will cost them 8 rocks, which I think was definitely better than destroying the drama. And as for GB Summon, I destroyed the lab. I think that also is obvious. So, I think I sort of held off on building these operas the last couple turns partly because I had other things to do, and partly because I was waiting for the terrorism. Now that the terrorism's out, I have no reason to hesitate. I play the engineering to make them cheaper, and I build 1 opera and 2 operas. So now I have more culture production than El Chupacabra does, and we're starting to see the potential of the peaceful victory for me, and also obviously the benefits of Gotti. So I think this is, because I committed myself to the peaceful plan, I mean, I'm not really threatened militarily right now. I think this is good and makes sense. So the question is what to spend my last 2 civil actions on. Movies, I think I don't need. With the opera, I would prefer spending my science and resources on other urban buildings, especially multimedia potentially with the internet, or possibly computers with Sid Meier. Engineering Genius, definitely worth consideration. Not as good with internet, especially since I have the engineering. But, you know, I'm only on Iron Mines, so the 4 resources saved is still better than nothing. I think Democracy and Patriotism are also worth considering. Chaplain, I didn't like. I think that all the other H3 leaders up in them. I could have not built the second opera and instead taken Marlena, but I thought that the opera is more important. I also kind of figured that there was a good chance Marlena would wheel around to me. So my decision, I think, is basically between take Engineering Genius and then maybe the Communism, or possibly the Patriotism, but I think the Patriotism would have made sense if I was going military, but since I'm going peacefully, I felt that the Democracy made more sense. With the Acropolis, and with me planning to build more urban buildings, and with the scientific cooperation, I thought that I should be able to afford this Democracy relatively easily. And I thought that both the increased urban building limit and the cultural production would be very helpful for me. And would be more helpful for me than the extra rocks from the Engineering Genius, especially since, like I said, Engineering Genius, when I have internet and engineering, is pretty awkward. Like, one of the weaknesses of internet, obviously, is it costs 5 civil actions. That's a lot easier when you have engineering to complete with only 2. Particularly Engineering Genius, I'd have to complete in 3, which isn't that much more, but, I mean, could be meaningful. Especially if I you know, don't have... I mean, I might have civil actions in communism, but communism would also be a hard government for me to play because I don't have a great happy face situation, so I think I do like the Democracy here. I just got the peace treaty, and that was the impact of... Which one was it? I don't remember anymore. But yeah, these impacts, I thought that I had a better chance of winning. Peace treaty, I mean, I have this pact I would prefer keeping, and these impacts I thought I had the best chance of being good for me. You know, science, like I said, I was kind of eyeing potentially Sid Meier with my internet. So if I get Sid Meier computers, impact of science I could definitely win it potentially. Even though Chupacabra has Einstein. Chupacabra seeds is the politics of strength, so I win that one too, which is nice. Maybe the politics of strength, I did see that one, so knowing the politics of strength is in the deck would be a reason to go military, because if I can win it, I'd obviously have 5 more military draws, although maybe it's a little risky to depend on winning that event when I don't know if my opponents might get stronger than me. Anyway, Chupacabra does play the multimedia, and he builds it, obviously, as we know, very strong with Einstein. And takes the military theory, is probably worried about war coming against them, especially since they don't have the air forces. So taking this when you don't have air forces makes a lot of sense to me. And they increase the population, take the patriotism, also makes sense. They were probably thinking at this point in the game that the biggest threat to them was a big war, so they were focusing on defending themselves. And again, especially since they don't have the air forces, that makes sense to me. GB Sturman offers me the Military Alliance Pact. I do end up accepting it, even though that cancels our Scientific Cooperation Pact. I possibly could have considered rejecting it and keeping the Scientific Cooperation. I think I didn't spend enough time on this as I maybe should have, because, yeah, rejecting it to keep the Scientific Cooperation definitely would also be very good for me. But I also felt that the military alliance between us would threaten El Chupacabra more, would maybe encourage them to devote more of their resources into their military instead of their culture production, and would make it easier for me to catch up in culture production. So, I think it's hard to say which of these will end up being a better pact for us against El Chupacabra. Now, DB Starman, kind of unfortunately, ends up taking Marlena, so I won't get her. But so even though they don't have theaters, she will help them with their tactics, so that makes sense. You know, El Chupacabra is looking more threatened now, even though DB Starman is only on 3 military actions and used them all up. They also take the movies, so they are going to be able to get Marlena with movies at least. So, with the revolutionary idea. Oh wait, sorry, I was dumb. Right, the Scientific Cooperation Pact is still there because I offered that, whereas the Military Alliance Pact was offered by DB Sherman. So yeah, there was no reason not to accept this. Sorry about that. Anyway, they take the movies for millennia, play the revolutionary idea, and play the movies. Valued this, and increase the population. So they valued playing the movies this turn. Because I guess them a Nobel Prize, and so that makes sense. Patriotism would definitely be a strong yellow card for them though, because they only own 3 military actions. I cede. So that one was the impact of. Oh, sorry, I didn't pay attention to what I drew. We can see I did end up drawing 2 wars, so the military strategy probably would have worked out for me after all, but again, it was a risk. Sorry, I didn't pay attention to what I drew, so I didn't see which impact I ceded. Anyway, I revealed economic progress. It doesn't benefit me that much, but it benefits me a little bit at least. So as for this turn, I don't really have enough science to play anything, to play any techs. I can consider Mandela I could get, but I wanted to get a leader that synergizes with internet. I could consider Fleming, but it wasn't clear to me that I would be able to get multimedias going. I mean, maybe. DB Starman probably isn't going to have the science for multimedias, but maybe. They might just take it to cut out or something. Fleming just felt a little risky when I didn't have the library in my hand already. And again, I thought that Sid Meier with my internet would be extremely strong. So I didn't take Fleming. I did, however, take the computers. I actually, because of Gotti and the scientific cooperation, I can play the computers for 4 science, which is not something you see every day. So I think this is definitely good. I mean, obviously, at this point, my science protection was looking kind of questionable. You know, I've persisted this long of alchemies, but now I'm in a position where I can easily upgrade to computers, which is good not only with internet, but also with Sid Meier, who I was definitely aiming for right now. I can get out of... And I built a computer directly, indeed. Instead of upgrading twice. Because, I think my original plan was to upgrade twice, actually. But because the economic progress was revealed, that wouldn't get me out of corruption, whereas doing it this way does get me out of corruption. And because I was aiming for Sid Meier, I was planning on having at least 3 computers anyway. So, I'm comfortable doing this. And as for my last 2 civil actions, I think I don't want these cards, so it's a question of do I want the reserves or the urban growth, and I think that's a pretty straightforward decision. I am definitely going to be getting more urban buildings, so I think urban growth is just almost strictly better than the reserves. I have more than enough food. Also, if DB's German doesn't cancel the scientific cooperation, doing it this way gives me just enough science to play democracy next turn. So I do discard the wars because I ended up deciding on the peaceful route instead. I keep the 2 impacts that I thought. Impact of Colony, obviously a very... Well, maybe not a safe seed, because I don't know who's going to win the 2 colonies in the deck, but it should at least be suitable. And with my computers, I thought that the impact of Science was also pretty likely for me to win, whereas the impact of Strength, because I'm planning on putting my remaining rocks into my urban buildings, I thought there was a pretty decent chance that my opponents would catch up to me in Strength. I draw an aggression, another bonus card, and an impact of technology. Maybe potentially suitable because I got the computers. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the autonomous territory. So there's kind of an interesting question here because I know there's also a wealthy territory in the deck of which one do I want. Because obviously right now I'm in full on just build urban buildings and finish internet mode. I definitely want the rocks from the autonomous territory that I win. So the wealthy territory would give me 4 more rocks. However, the autonomous territory gives me 1 more civil action. Also military action, but I probably won't be using this. It's really the civil action I was aiming for. And so I think probably I was in a position where I could expect to win one of these colonies. We can see I end up winning the autonomous territory, but chances were low that I would be able to win both. So you could make a case that I shouldn't have bid a lot for this territory because the wealthy territory would give me 4 more rocks and therefore be better for me in the end. However, you know, it's also kind of tough to say. I mean, who knows when, you know, the Wealthy Territory might be the last card in the deck. Who knows when it might be revealed. The Autonomous Territory is revealed right now. I'll be able to use the rocks right now. The Civil Action might also end up being quite helpful for me. You know, it could be good for Impact of Governments as well. So I think that bidding a lot for the Autonomous Territory, obviously it's, you know, usually the strongest territory in the deck. In my particular situation, you could argue Wealthy Territory is stronger, but maybe Autonomous Territory is still stronger, even in my position. And again, it's available right now, whereas I don't know when Wealthy Territory might be revealed. So I think it probably is better for me to try to win this, and I do end up being able to win it for just my Swordsman and 3 bonus cards, thanks to the navigation. Chupacabra builds a 3rd Knight to compete in strength, takes a second copy of Computers. I think I missed. They played the Pro Sports, increase the population, build the Pro Sports. I think that, oh right, I discarded an Impact of Happiness because Chupacabra had the Pro Sports, so I figured it was probably not going to be a good impact for me. Plays the Revolutionary Idea and takes the Civil Service and plays it, even though they had the Could Have laws already, notably. But that also makes sense. I mean, extra civil action, you know, maybe they wanted to play Tex with Einstein. They didn't have the rocks to upgrade to Computers, so. And maybe, it's not clear that they're planning on upgrading to Computers next turn, though. Takes the reserves and the mechanized agriculture. Also wins the Nobel Prize. DB Sherman Seeds, and the Wealthy Territory is the next turn available. I am willing to put able to put 9 into it, but no more. I was only willing to bid 1 of my cannons. I felt that bidding 2 cannons that cost 10 rocks to win 9 rocks doesn't make sense. So, Chupacabra is unfortunately able to end up winning this one for only 1 Knight and a bunch of bonus cards. The Starman is at least able to build 2 theaters now, so they start getting some culture production going. And takes 2 copies of reserves, probably for more movies. They're probably aiming on getting 4 movies, and an Endowment of the Arts, because they are behind in culture right now. I see the impact of science, so I basically did some calculations, and I decided that I was almost guaranteed to be able to win the impact of science instead of Chupacabra, because I'm going to be getting more Computers this turn. Even with Sid Meier cutting my science income, I thought that I'd almost certainly still be ahead of Chupacabra in science production, so I felt safe seeding it. I reveal the impact of architecture that I seeded, so that ends up giving me a little bit more culture than my opponent, so it ended up being a decent impact for me. As for this turn, so I definitely, you know, Gotti lasted, we can see Gotti lasted me till the very end of Age 3, so I think he definitely ended up being a much better leader for me than Nobel would have been. Anyway, I decided to build, and the reason I felt comfortable seeding the impact of science is because I'm actually going to build 4 computers. We can see that Acropolis coming in, well, I would have been able to build the 4th one this turn anyway, because I would have played the Democracy. But this at least makes the Democracy a little cheaper, so. But yeah, I do play Sid Meier, obviously. Very powerful with computers and internet. And I play the Democracy, so now I'm really getting my culture production going a lot. To get efficient upgrade that I'll use on my computers and an urban growth. So I eat corruption this turn, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I didn't have a good way to get out of corruption this turn. The 2 blue cubes that the Autonomous Territory cost me ended up being pretty meaningful here. However, by taking these yellow cards instead, we can see that I am actually using the extra civil action from the Autonomous Territory at least to take this urban growth. And I made sure to do calculations to make sure that these 2 yellow cards would give me enough to build and upgrade the urban buildings I want to build, as well as enough rocks to finish the internet. So that's obviously a very important thing you want to do in this turn, so we can calculate. I'll have 15 next turn after corruption. These will give me +8, so that'll be 23. The computer upgrades are going to cost me... Okay, so the urban growth is only going to save me 3. So that'll give me 23. The internet is going to cost me 14, so that's 9. And that'll be enough to upgrade both of my computers. So with these yellow cards, I will be able to upgrade both of my remaining computers as well as finish the internet. I draw an Impact of Harmony, a Pact, and an Aggression. We're in Age 4, last turn of the game. Chupacabra Seeds reveals, I think the Impact of Balance is what I seeded, and it ends up being a pretty good impact for me. Chupacabra plays Satellites, destroys a lab to build a second arena. It looks like they probably seeded the Impact of Competition. They definitely seeded the Impact of Competition. Plays the reserves, increases the population again to build another theater to get a little bit more culture production. And it looks like they probably seeded the Impact of Variety with playing the Satellites and dissipating a Knight for a Warrior. They're still strongest even after doing that. DB Starman plays the Endowment for 6 culture, builds a third theater with the 2 reserves. They have just enough rocks to build a 4th theater even. Actually, 2 rocks extra because of architecture. And they take some cards. Okay. It's my turn. I play the Impact of Tech. That will be a good impact for me. I reveal Impact of Government. So this is another... the Autonomous Territory ends up giving me +3 culture for this, which is nice. And as stated previously, I'm able to upgrade with my computers and finish the internet for 35 culture, which is definitely pretty good. Quite good. And I also play the tanks for that Impact of Technology I seeded. I increase my population for potential impact of population. I destroy my farm. It cannot possibly help me because the Impact of Balance is already out. I had the Impact of Agriculture that I discarded, and it doesn't make a difference for me. And I have the Impact of Harmony in my hand, so there's no possible impact that this farm would help me with. And I need to destroy it so that I'm not in rebellion. We can see before the final cards are revealed that thanks to the internet, I am now 35 culture ahead of El Chupacabra, who is a lot ahead of DB Starman, so it's going to be pretty hard for the 5 impacts on the deck to change these standings, but we'll see what happens. First is that Impact of Competition, not a surprise, but it only gives El Chupacabra 8 culture against me. Next is the Impact of Technology I seeded. As we can see, it's an equal impact for me and El Chupacabra, so I got +3 culture from seeding it. Next is the Impact of Variety. This gives El Chupacabra +4 culture against me. Next is the Impact of Culture. This was probably seeded by DB Starman, but that gives me 7 culture against El Chupacabra. And the last is that Impact of Science that I seeded, and as we can see, I do indeed end up winning it, giving me another +7 against El Chupacabra. I end up winning this game by 35 points. I think that of the 4 games I had played up to this point in the group, this was my best game, I think. Even though I won the last 3-player game, you know, there was that one turn where the Dock Edge just hit me and I had to do weird stuff, and there's some other mistakes I made. This game, I think, was pretty clean. I didn't... Going back over in retrospect, even the plays that I felt were a little more questionable, I don't think were obvious mistakes. They were just other plays that you could argue could have been better. And as we can see, my judgment that a peaceful victory is possible for me ended up being correct. I ended up winning by a lot. And, you know, maybe El Chupacabra could have played differently to win peacefully. But I think that again, the situation I was in where I had the internet, where with Gotti and with the synergistic leaders that I could get, in this case I ended up getting Sid Meier, being able to protect that strong internet. The internet gave me 35 culture, which was the exact amount I won by. So I think that while I definitely could have also won militarily, because I did end up drawing those 2 wars, deciding to go peaceful instead was a safer option. It didn't rely on those card draws, and it seemed, and as we can see, it ended up working out well. I think taking Gotti over Nobel was also a choice that I maybe was not immediately obvious. I mean, to some people it might be with different playstyles, but to me it wasn't obvious, but Gotti ended up providing me a ton of value. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the way I played. I think that I played ages 1 and 2 pretty well, even though I was the weakest through most of those ages. You know, I took calculated risks with Saladin to be in a position where I could bluff that I could defend myself until I drew the bonus cards that made me actually able to defend myself. And with Saladin and the early monarchy, and with me focusing on my economy first, I was able to survive being weakest for most of ages 1 and half of age 2, and set myself in a position where I had the economy to push culture hard in age 3. So, yeah, pretty happy with how I played this game, and with that, we'll take a quick look at the standings. So we can see that in the process of this game, actually, all the remaining games that didn't involve me finished. So unfortunately, I ended up being the sloth in this group. But the results of those remaining 2-player games ended up favoring me because Sakic ended up beating El Chupacabra, which is certainly huge for me. It heavily limits the amount of points that El Chupacabra can potentially have. El Chupacabra only has 1 game left to play, the 2-player game against me. So even if they win it, they would only be at 22.5 points, whereas then I would have 3 more games to play to catch up to that. So El Chupacabra losing this 2-player game to Sakic means that my 2-player game against El Chupacabra becomes less important. I am still third in the group, but I have much fewer games to play. I'm only 0.5 points behind DB Stormman with few games less to play, so I think I'm definitely in a great position to overtake them. I am 4.5 points behind El Chupacabra with 3 fewer games left to play. So in order to overtake El Chupacabra, I will have to win those games, but because of having won those previous 2, having won both of my 3-player games against El Chupacabra, that put me in a great position to potentially overtake them, even just with 1 more win in a 3-player game, for example. So definitely the way these 3-player games and 2-player games so far have gone have benefited me, but I have to actually play, right? 14... If I lose all my remaining games, definitely possible with the quality of my competition especially, I would be stuck on 14 points and I would be 3rd in the groups, or maybe even 4th in the group if Sakic wins both of their remaining games. So definitely can't rest yet. I'm still behind in points. I need to actually win the games I'm in, but I at least have a good shot at it. So in future videos, we'll see how that ends up going. But in the meantime, as always, if you have any comments on my play or my video making, please let me know. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.